Hello, I'm Cynthia Schneider. I teach diplomacy and culture at Georgetown. My quick answer to that is my sense in the Arab Spring is the United States is irrelevant. So it wouldn't occur to them to lobby here. Yeah. But that's not my question. I know it's about politics and security, but I wanted to ask you something about culture. In countering extremism, it seems to me a lot of extremism is actually a cultural attack, as well as obviously a military and terrorist attack, but it's attacking at the core culture of many different countries, whether it's Egypt or Afghanistan. And what seems to me to be, and by culture I mean everything, music, poetry, dance, film, everything. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of a cultural surge countering that, either coming from the United States or in the regions. And yet, the GCC has made, many GCC countries, Qatar, UAE, Oman, have made culture sort of their calling card to the world and are really presenting themselves as cultural places and putting a great deal of money into it. So I'm wondering how you see that position of the sort of cultural surge outward in terms of their public diplomacy, and also how it relates to countering extremism.
Good. Got the question. How can we put a cultural dimension to your
actually you have different way to fight. We reach a point that extremism cannot be fought by soft measure. The rehabilitation program in Saudi Arabia, I went to this program, and they brought these people. They are painting, playing music, all this. But you see, you're talking about different culture here. The only way to fight extremism, Islamist extremism I'm talking here, is by convincing them that they are wrong from within the Islamic principle. And this is what they're doing now. It's a question you have to attack the ideology. But I don't see actually the cultural instrument going to work in our primitive society. There's very limited impact. And what you have now, basically you promote a moderate Islam to counter the extremist Islam. And it is working. It is working.
I think I would just add to that in terms of what they're doing, although from my point of view, the Muslim nations were a little bit slow in starting to do this. There's gaining momentum in terms of advocating for the more positive parts that I think the vast majority of Muslims identify as their religion. So I think that is underway. And now we'll go to the gentleman back there in the. Yes, sir, you with your hand up. Yes. You're next.
Thanks. I have a 4-part question. Thanks. My name is Salman Arabi. I'm from the Interpress Service. Thank you all, by the way, very much. It was a very illuminating panel. I had a question just about, you all talked a lot about the Gulf vis-a-vis, the surrounding regions and vis-a-vis its relations with the U.S., but I'm wondering if you can speak just a little bit about some of the internal dynamics that I feel like a lot of you took for granted. You all seem to assume that the Gulf region enjoys a legitimacy greater than the rest of the Arab world, and I think as the Arab Spring sweeps through, those things can't necessarily be taken for granted, especially in Bahrain, especially in Saudi's response to Bahrain, where Sha'ab yurid isqat al-nizam doesn't sound like a reform chant to me, and I was wondering how you can assume that the Gulf countries are somehow more legitimate or more immune to what's happening in the Arab Spring, considering legitimacy is proven through free and fair elections, which the Gulf doesn't seem particularly keen on doing. So how do you know that you're immune from the Arab Spring, and if not, do you think the Gulf region might be next? Thank you.
Yeah, which one of you want to take that? And if you'd expand it a little bit to the question of Arab monarchies in general, is there kind of a different rule for Arab monarchies, perhaps, or a different path than democratization, which obviously here in this capital, we prefer it. We didn't want to have a British king. We didn't want George Washington to be a king. We don't think much of kings, but we do recognize that there might be a different way of looking at this.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't think there is this assumption in the region that one is immune. I think it's very clear that the impact also of the changes of the Arab Spring are going to also have an impact in the region. We've seen it already. We've seen the impact in Bahrain. We've seen the protests in Oman. So certainly I don't think the ruling families feel that they are sort of living in a cocoon and they're not going to be challenged. I think there is a recognition that also significant change still has to happen in the monarchies themselves. They need to adapt also to this new environment. And this is what's currently going on. I mean, I have to also say that, I mean, reform has already been going on in the region. It's not that the monarchies just stand still. We've seen institutionalization in the last 10 years take a step forward. We've seen political development, at least to some degree, moving forward. There's been an emphasis on education reform, which will have an impact on society as a large. There's been an emphasis in Saudi Arabia, for example, with the king implementing significant judicial reform, focusing more on instances of levels of transparency, accountability, handling more the subject of corruption. And these are all, if you look in the last, in the debates happening in Kuwait, for example, corruption has been one of the key issues that people have focused on, and which the election campaigns for their parliament have been dominated by. So there is this sense, there is debate going on in the region on a lot of these fronts. And I think this is combined with the recognition, even by the ruling families, that things cannot just stand still. Now the question is, how fast do you move forward with the change? And I think that was mentioned earlier. There is this preference, of course, in the region for more or less evolutionary change. That you can oversee the process, that you maintain a level of stability within that. Because nobody in the Gulf wants to see situations as we've noticed them happening in Libya or in Iraq or what's going on in Syria. I mean, in that sense, there's a lot to protect, and you don't want to just import chaos in the end of the day, or have a chaotic situation to develop. But I do think that there's definitely a political debate going on, and also a level of reform.
Now, I think that Dr. Abdelaziz also made the point in his opening presentation that in the one monarchy where there has been mass protests and significant smashing of heads and arrests, Bahrain, there was a very strong sectarian element, which tends to differentiate them from the other Arab monarchies, if that's not an unfair comment. Ambassador Hughes. Would you wait till you got the microphone here?
Excuse me. My name is Art Hughes. I'm with the Middle East Institute and with the Jerusalem Old City Initiative. My question is for Dr. Sager. How do you interpret Prince Turki's op-ed in the Times the day before yesterday? Thank you.
It's a reflection of a lot of people's thoughts. He is not, maybe a lot of people, they did not like it, that he went to the point when he says that this will harm the U.S.-Saudi relation in the future. And so, the whole Arab-U.S. relation, it's exactly what I've been saying. I'm saying U.S. have gained a strong foothold in the region, historically, and also now by not interfering on the Arab Revolution. By the way, we have not seen a single American flag has been burned in this revolution. It was all domestic. No Israeli flag even was burned. So it's all domestically driven. And the US have done the best by sit and watch, wait and see, turning, gradual, approaches, different statement, differently. In the same day, we hear 4 different statements coming from the White House and the State Department. That was all great because the people appreciated there was no intervention and it was support to the people. But you destroy all of that gain by having a one position, which is against your policy that you have stated that you wanted to have 2-state solution, starting from President Bush at that time. When President Obama came into power, he continuously emphasized in that, and he said it was in his top priority. It was hope and change that he wanted to bring to the Arab peace and so on. And then in the end you say, I'm going to use my veto. That have created this sort of disappointment. The difference between the different policies issues that in the region they feel it's against, somehow somebody's not really coordinating with them, and there's a lot of issues against their interest. They do agree in certain issues and there's a disagreement in certain issues, but at the same time, that is the killing point.